AITA for telling my wife we either share our lotto winnings or we separate and I get half anyway. She called it her winnings, so I decided to legally prove it was joint. This might be a long one, and I honestly don't even know where to start, but I'm at the point where I just need to put it all out there because I'm emotionally drained, confused, and kind of grieving the relationship I thought I had. I've been married to my wife for nearly a decade, and we've got a pretty average suburban life together. We have 2 young kids, a house with a mortgage that always felt a little too big for our means, and 2 decent jobs that paid the bills but left us tired at the end of every day. We were happy, or at least I thought we were. Stressed sometimes, like any couple, but solid. Every now and then we'd buy a lotto ticket. Nothing religious or anything, but maybe once or twice a month. It was always this fun little ritual, especially on the nights we were too tired to do much else. We'd sit on the couch after the kids were asleep, scratch or check the numbers, and laugh about what we'd do if we won. I remember so clearly one night, both of us just worn out from work and life, she turned to me and said, if we ever win enough to clear the mortgage, we should both cut back to school hours. Imagine being able to drop the kids off and pick them up every day, no stress, no rushing, just, finally having time. I agreed. That idea became kind of a daydream we both clung to. A fantasy we'd built together. Fast forward to a couple of months ago. We actually won. It wasn't the jackpot, but it was enough, more than enough, to wipe our mortgage completely and still have a generous cushion left over. I can't describe the feeling of logging into the account and seeing those numbers. It was surreal. We were stunned, giddy, crying, hugging, pacing the living room like lunatics. It felt like the start of a new chapter, one we'd been dreaming of for years. The first thing we did was pay off the house. That felt incredible. I remember standing outside with her, looking at it like it was suddenly this magical place. For the first time, it was ours. Really, truly ours. We opened some wine, let the kids stay up late, celebrated with pizza and way too much ice cream. It felt like we were stepping into a lighter, easier version of our lives. That feeling lasted about 2 days. Everything started unraveling the moment we talked about what came next. I said I was excited to drop to school hours like we always talked about, maybe even take a long vacation somewhere warm, just the 4 of us. She smiled at me, but then she said something that didn't register at first, something like, well, I won't be working at all soon, so I can start planning that trip properly. I kind of laughed and said, yeah, part-time is going to feel like a holiday already. But she didn't laugh. She just stared at me. She said she meant it. That she wasn't going back. That this was her moment to finally quit work for good. She looked so calm about it, like this was always the plan. I asked if she was serious, and she looked at me like I had grown another head. She said of course she was. She said she had earned this, that the money was hers, and she was finally free. I was floored. I genuinely thought she was joking. But she kept going, talking about how she had worked so hard all her life, how she deserved this break, how she had plans to start some hobbies, maybe join a few groups, take care of herself for once. I said that was great, but we still needed 2 incomes unless we drastically changed our lifestyle. The winnings were generous, sure, but not infinite. We couldn't coast for the rest of our lives, not with 2 kids and a house to maintain. She cut me off. Told me I was ruining the moment. I tried to reason with her, said she could still reduce her hours or take extended leave, but quitting entirely wasn't sustainable unless we wanted to burn through our cushion in a few years. I even said, if I'm cutting back to school hours, we'll both still need to contribute. That was when she flipped. She shouted, called me a gold digger, said I only cared about the money, not her. I was stunned into silence. She had never, ever spoken to me like that. I asked for space. I was honestly afraid. I don't say that lightly. My wife has never been violent or aggressive, but there was something in her eyes that night that scared me. It was like looking at a stranger. We didn't talk for a couple of days. Just did the bare minimum to keep the house running and the kids sorted. Every time I tried to bring it up again, she either shut me down or repeated the same lines. It was her win, her money, her freedom. I reminded her that we only ever bought 1 ticket together, that it was always a joint thing, that we shared everything. She said this was different. That this was the universe finally rewarding her for years of sacrifice. I asked if she really believed that, if she honestly thought I was with her for her money, and she said she didn't know anymore. Then came the bombshell. One afternoon she casually mentioned that she had already put in her resignation at work. No discussion, no warning. Just a done deal. I lost it. I told her I couldn't go along with this, that it felt like she had completely changed overnight. That if she was going to make this decision alone and refuse to treat the winnings as shared, then I would fight for my share through the house, through a lawyer if I had to. That set off the worst fight we've ever had. She screamed at me, said I was heartless, manipulative, greedy. That I was destroying her joy. That I was threatening her because I couldn't stand her finally having something for herself. I tried to explain, again, that I didn't want to take anything from her, I just wanted what we had always talked about. I wanted us to share the reward the same way we shared the dream. But she wasn't hearing me. Since then, we've been living in this weird, cold silence. She's at home all day now, doing little projects, pretending everything's fine in front of the kids. I'm working my regular hours, juggling drop-offs and pickups when I can, quietly panicking about the future. I've started sleeping in the spare room. I don't know who she is anymore. I don't know how this money, which was supposed to be a blessing, has turned everything to dust. I haven't told anyone in our lives yet. Not family, not friends. I don't want to be the guy who complains about winning the lotto. But this win didn't make our lives better. It pulled back the curtain and showed me something I wasn't ready to see, that maybe the woman I thought I knew, the life I thought we built together, was never really as solid as I believed. And now I'm left wondering if our marriage was always a fantasy too, just like those tickets we used to buy. I feel completely alone. Update 1. It took longer than I care to admit, but I finally worked up the nerve to try again. Things had been cold for weeks. Not just silent, cold. The kind of silence that spreads into the bones of your home. Meals were quieter. Chores became wordless routines. The kids were starting to notice, asking why mommy didn't come tuck them in, why daddy was sleeping in the office. I couldn't let it stay like that. Not just for them, but for me too. I needed something. Clarity, closure, answers, anything but the slow burn of pretending everything was fine when the whole house was frozen. So one evening, after the kids had gone to bed and she was sitting alone on the couch scrolling through her phone, I sat down across from her and asked, not angrily, not accusing, why she thought the money was only hers. I said I wanted to understand, not fight. That I needed to understand how we'd gone from dreaming together to dividing everything like enemies. For a long time, she didn't say anything. She just stared at me like she was debating whether or not to entertain the question at all. Eventually, she said it was simple. That she had stopped for gas on her way home from work, alone, and grabbed a scratch ticket with her personal debit card. Said it was a whim, something she didn't even think about, and when she realized it was a winner, she scratched it then and there in the car. She brought it inside and handed it to me only after she had already checked the numbers and confirmed it. In her eyes, the ticket had been hers from the moment she paid for it. That was her justification. I sat there, completely floored. For years, literally years, we treated every lotto ticket like a joint venture. We bought them together or separately, it didn't matter. No one ever kept track of whose card got swiped. We had one account for essentials and a bit of pocket money for the little stuff, and even then, we didn't treat anything as strictly mine or yours. The tickets were always ours. The dreams were ours. The jokes about escaping work, the lists of destinations we traveled to, the talk of time with the kids, all of it was a shared fantasy. But now, out of nowhere, she was retroactively rebranding this one ticket as a solo mission. I reminded her of the conversations we had, the nights we sat on the couch checking numbers, talking like equals, and she just shrugged. Said, this one was different. No further explanation. No acknowledgement of how bizarre that sounded. Just a flat refusal to engage. That was the moment something in me cracked. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I just got quiet, stood up, and walked away. The next day, I did something I had promised myself I wouldn't do. Something I had resisted even thinking about. I contacted a lawyer. I felt like garbage for it. It felt like betraying my marriage, like confirming that the distance between us wasn't temporary. But I couldn't keep floating in this strange limbo anymore. I needed someone who wasn't emotionally involved to tell me the facts. And that's exactly what I got. The lawyer was kind but professional. I laid out everything, how we always treated tickets as joint purchases, how we had no prenup, how she had suddenly claimed ownership. And the response was clear: in our state, anything acquired during the marriage, income, property, winnings, is considered marital property unless specifically agreed otherwise in a legally binding contract. Which we didn't have. It didn't matter whose card bought the ticket. It didn't matter if she scratched it first or kept the receipt. As far as the law was concerned, it was ours. I left that meeting feeling both vindicated and sick. I didn't want to use the law like a weapon. I didn't want to fight her in court. But I needed her to see that this wasn't just about feelings. It was about fairness. About trust. About reality. When I told her what the lawyer said, she didn't scream this time. She didn't argue. She didn't even deny it. She just froze. Her face went blank in that practiced, detached way she'd been leaning on for weeks. But I saw something different in her eyes. It wasn't anger. It wasn't defiance. It was fear. The kind of fear that comes when a story you've been telling yourself starts to unravel. She went quiet. Not the cold, calculated silence I'd gotten used to. A different kind of silence. Like something had shifted inside her and she was trying to decide what came next. And in that moment, for the first time since all of this started, I didn't feel like I was standing across from a stranger. I felt like I was staring at someone who had finally realized the ground beneath them wasn't as solid as they thought. I think she knew she was on shaky ground. Update 2. Once the legal process actually started moving, things took a turn I didn't quite expect. I thought there would be pushback, angry messages, formal disputes, a lawyer letter of her own. But she didn't come at me directly. There were no countersuits. No legal arguments. Instead, it was like she decided to fight in a slower, more corrosive way. Like she was trying to wear me down without ever stepping into a courtroom. She started misplacing things. Not just the random clutter everyone loses, but specific documents my lawyer needed: proof of income, tax returns, the original letter from the Lottery Commission confirming the win. She swore she didn't know where they went. That she must have accidentally thrown them out. I didn't accuse her of anything, just noted it all down, passed it on to my lawyer. Then it was the missed meetings. Appointments we'd both agreed to, scheduled in writing, sometimes even reminders sent to both our emails. Suddenly she was busy or claimed she didn't know we were meeting. Every step forward was like dragging a boat through mud. It was deliberate. And it was exhausting. Worse than that, she started poisoning the well socially. I started hearing from mutual friends that she was saying I had threatened her. That I was trying to manipulate her, that I was demanding half of her money to punish her for quitting her job. She told people I had become cold, controlling, obsessed with money. She didn't say I hit her or anything that would have made people call the police, but she implied enough to make people uneasy. Some of our mutual friends pulled away from me entirely. A couple of them sent carefully worded texts checking in, trying to stay neutral. I didn't engage. I didn't send screenshots or try to clear my name. I kept my mouth shut, my head down, and just stuck to the process. I documented everything. Every missed meeting, every lost file, every time she changed her story. I made copies of what I could, took photos when necessary. I stayed calm. I never raised my voice, never retaliated. I was polite in emails, respectful in person. Not because I wanted to play the martyr, but because I didn't want this turning into something that would scar our kids. They were already living in a house filled with tension so thick you could feel it pressing against your chest. The least I could do was keep some part of their world steady. I kept every routine alive, packed lunches, drove them to school, helped with homework, managed dinner even when she was home doing nothing. I'd tuck them in, tell them I loved them, and then quietly open my laptop and spend the next hour reviewing paperwork for a divorce I still wasn't convinced I wanted. Then something completely out of left field happened. I got a call one afternoon from a number I didn't recognize. It was her HR department. Apparently, when she quit her job so suddenly, it triggered a clause that impacted her retirement benefits. They needed clarification about her employment history, and for some reason, they called me. I was still listed as her emergency contact, and apparently one of the forms she'd filled out had financial implications that required spousal verification. The HR rep asked if we could confirm a few things, including some basic information about shared accounts and household expenses. At first, I thought it was just some bureaucratic error. But then the HR rep mentioned something that made my stomach twist. During their internal audit, they had reviewed all related documents she'd submitted in the months before she resigned, including a benefits update form and, interestingly, a copy of the lottery claim paperwork. That last part caught me completely off guard. I hadn't even realized she had submitted it as part of her employment exit file. The kicker. The ticket had been claimed under both of our names. She'd used our joint address. She had included a note in the form about how the winnings were going to change her career path. She'd mentioned me during the initial claim call with the lottery office, which was recorded, and even filled out a section that explicitly listed spouse under co-ownership. I didn't even know that section existed. She had done all of that before this nightmare even began. Then she tried to rewrite history. When my lawyer saw the paperwork, he actually laughed. Not in a mocking way, but like someone who couldn't believe such a clean, airtight piece of evidence had landed in our laps. He called it a gift from the universe. Said that no judge on the planet would dispute co-ownership now. The forms were public, filed, time-stamped, official. And she'd done it all herself. I wish I could say I felt victorious. That I walked around with my chest out, vindicated and proud. But all I felt was empty. Hollow. Like I had won something meaningless. This wasn't supposed to be a battle. We were supposed to be partners. This money, this stupid, life-changing pile of paper, was supposed to make things easier, not rip everything apart. We could have had the life we dreamed about. The slow mornings, the time with our kids, the freedom to breathe. And instead, we were here. Quiet enemies under the same roof. She didn't say anything when I brought it up. No denial. No anger. Just silence. I think she realized she'd overplayed her hand, or maybe just forgotten how much she used to believe in us before all of this started. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain. But I saw it in her face, this flicker of recognition, like she finally understood what she'd done. And that was the part that broke me the most. Not the betrayal. Not the lies. But the fact that she used to believe in us enough to put my name on that form, and somewhere along the way, she decided it wasn't true anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't out for revenge. I just wanted this wall between us to come down. Update 3. It happened in the most unceremonious way possible. No grand gesture. No blowout confrontation. Just a quiet night, a long day, and a version of silence that felt heavier than usual. I had stayed late at work, sorting through a pile of deadlines I'd been pushing off for too long. The kind of tedious stuff you do with one eye on the clock and the other on your inbox, just trying to hold the pieces of your life in place while everything else feels unsteady. By the time I got home, the sun had already gone down and the house was completely still. The kids were asleep, lights dimmed in the hallway, not even the low murmur of the TV humming from the living room. She was there, though, sitting on the couch with her knees pulled up under a throw blanket, staring out the window like she was trying to see something through the dark. No phone. No book. Just her and the quiet. I almost walked past her, honestly. The way things had been lately, that kind of distance had become normal. I didn't expect conversation. I barely expected acknowledgement. But then, without looking at me, she said it. I lost myself. I froze. Not because I didn't hear her, but because I did. Because the tone of it was so unlike anything I'd heard from her in weeks. It wasn't angry, wasn't defensive. It was small. Bare. Honest in a way that cracked something open in me. I sat down slowly, unsure of what to say, and asked what she meant. What followed was something I wasn't prepared for. She said that for years, she'd been drowning in the routine. The relentless cycle of work, parenting, bills, emails, appointments, after-school pickups, grocery lists, deadlines, and obligations. That it had gotten so loud that she couldn't hear herself anymore. That the version of her that had dreams and joy and fire had been ground down to autopilot. When the money came, it felt like a door had opened. A bright, unexpected door in the middle of a long, gray hallway. She didn't think. She ran. Ran through it like she was being chased. She admitted she didn't stop to look around, didn't consider what it meant or who it left behind. She was terrified that if she hesitated for even a second, if she slowed down or asked permission or looked back, the door would vanish and she'd be trapped again. And worse, she said she was afraid I would be the one pulling her back in. That part stung. But not in a defensive way. More like hearing something you always suspected deep down, spoken out loud for the first time. We had built a life together that looked stable on the outside, but under the surface, we were both exhausted. We were both gasping for air but taking turns pretending to be fine for the other. I realized, in that moment, that her fear wasn't about me as a person, it was about what I represented. Stability. Normalcy. The old rhythm. She admitted she had been wrong. About the ticket. About the way she'd shut me out. About calling me a gold digger, something she said she didn't believe even when she said it, and certainly didn't believe now. That one hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't even realized how deeply it had cut until she brought it up. I had carried that word around like a secret weight, embarrassed and ashamed that someone I loved could think that of me. She said she had panicked. That some part of her had resented how equal everything in our life had always had to be. Not because she didn't value the partnership, but because this was the first time she had something that felt like hers and hers alone, and she clung to it like it was oxygen. She didn't know how to share it without losing it. And so she held it too tightly, too selfishly, and in doing so, almost broke everything we had. We talked for hours that night. About more than the money. About everything. Our marriage. Our burnout. The slow erosion of joy that neither of us noticed until it was nearly gone. We talked about how we had stopped dreaming together. How the fantasies we used to build side by side had been replaced with logistics and calendar reminders and exhausted glances across the dinner table. We acknowledged, finally and painfully, that we had been surviving, not living. There were no instant fixes. No dramatic proclamations of forgiveness or tearful reconciliations. Just two people finally telling the truth after months of Cold War silence. But something shifted in that moment. The ice cracked. We looked at each other without armor for the first time in what felt like forever. Since then, things have been better. Not perfect. Not fixed. But better. We agreed to start couples therapy, not because we were ready to close the book on what happened, but because we wanted to understand how we got here in the first place. She retracted her resignation at work and negotiated a leave of absence instead, giving her space to breathe without slamming doors shut. I reduced my own hours to match the school schedule, like we always dreamed of, so we could both be present with the kids in a way we hadn't before. We even booked a trip. Nothing extravagant. No luxury resorts or five-star getaways. Just a modest cabin near the woods with a lake out back and no cell reception. A chance to disconnect from the noise and reconnect with our kids, with ourselves, with each other. The money? It's in a joint account now. We sat down with a financial advisor and made a plan together, one that allows for comfort without excess, freedom without recklessness. It's no longer a wedge. No longer hers or mine. It's ours again. A tool, not a weapon. I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know if we'll ever feel the way we used to, or if that version of us was a phase we've simply outgrown. But I know we're facing it together again. I know that when I come home now, there's warmth in the house. Laughter. Eye contact. That the kids are smiling more, that we're smiling more. And maybe that's worth more than any winning ticket ever could be.